Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Vestanland. This is episode 29, and in this episode, I am continuing the international airport build that I started in the previous video. Um, I had initially thought, as I sort of laid out a plan for this airport to be done in 3 episodes, but as with a lot of the projects in this series, it's kind of spiraled. And it's probably going to be more like 4 episodes. Um, so, on the one hand, you get more videos. On the other hand, it's going to take a little bit longer to see the finished product. Um, so yeah, in this episode, I focus on building these custom concourses, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. Um, I had initially planned on also detailing all of the runways and stuff like that. But again, as I said, it ended up spiraling out of control. It took a lot longer to get these concourses done. And I sort of had to do a lot of research to kind of better understand how runways and airports in general work. Um, and as a result, I wasn't able to get into that in the way I wanted to in this video. So that'll be the focus of the next one. And yeah, hopefully we'll do it justice. Because yeah, I want to be wary of sort of rushing into a project that I don't really know how to do, just for the sake of it. So yeah, I didn't do that, and as a result, I'm just sort of focusing on the concourses, which are a little bit easier to just kind of gauge how they look from Google Earth, whatnot. So yeah, as far as what I'm doing on screen, as you can see, I'm starting off with these concourses that I had stretched out in the last episode and shortened, or not shortened, but narrowed with the node controller. And what I decided to do was to cover each of these concourses with kind of custom props and stuff. And basically, what I wanted to have happen was for the concourses to still exist in game and function as part of the airport's DLC. And you'll see kind of throughout the episode, I'm connecting up the airport or airplane stands rather to these concourses, making sure they kind of fit in. But then not that the kind of default generic concourses look bad or anything, but I wanted to just do something a little bit more interesting and kind of customize it. As you can see, I'm using this canopy asset thing here, and then using procedural objects to kind of stretch it out and kind of make it fit this kind of cool triangle shape. I really like how at the end this kind of looks like, I don't know, it's sort of like clouds almost, which I feel like is fitting for an airport terminal or concourse. Yeah, you'll see I kind of do a little bit of a different theme for each one. Kind of trying to get like different styles architecturally. I was kind of thinking that these different concourses were probably built at different times. And it probably, yeah, I wanted that. I wanted the architecture to reflect that. And yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. I think it's what I've sort of gleaned from looking at Google Earth and satellite images of airports, is there's a lot of stuff you don't see, which obviously makes sense. Like if you're flying through an airport, you don't really experience how it actually looks. You don't really get a lot of the you don't really get a sense of how the scale is, how massive the scale is. And you don't get a sense of how these concourses actually look from the outside. And it was so that makes it kind of an interesting challenge for me to build them in game, because yeah, I'm kind of focusing on parts of the airport that I don't really have any direct experience with, and I'm sure, I mean, not very many people do, unless you're, like a pilot flying into an airport or something like that. Yeah, this is what I was talking about in terms of lining up these plane stands, trying to get them, make sure that they kind of function within the game. You can see I used Move It to kind of shift the nodes around, and I'm using some of these planes just to try to get a sense of what the scale should look like. My goal is for this airport to function within game, of course, but I also want to kind of balance that with having a realistic scale, as I've talked about countless times throughout the series. And I think the way I'm going to be able to accomplish that is by sort of splicing in some of the plane stands from the airport DLC, and then also just having some that are just purely decorative. And that way I'll be able to at least have some planes moving in and out of the airport, but then also have sort of at least like a somewhat realistic number of total like gates for the airport. Because yeah, I mean, this is not going to be a massive airport necessarily by sort of world standards, but it's a big international airport, and I wanted to sort of scale it down so it fits in this kind of specific part of the map. And to do that, at least like if I kind of just went by the game mechanics and tried to put an airport in this map, it would really just be like a small regional airport with a couple of gates. And if I wanted to create an airport that kind of mirrored the scale that I want to achieve, then I'd probably get, it'd be like 2 or 3 times as large, and it would dwarf kind of everything else that I've built so far. So yeah, I think this is kind of a happy medium, and I think by the end of this episode, I really have a good sense of what it's going to look like. I get kind of a lot of the big things done, and I'm really happy with how it turns out. And yeah, so in terms of the on-screen stuff, I'm using the same canopy asset to kind of connect this concourse with the terminal. This is the terminal, of course, that's going to be connected to the train station, and that'll probably be in the next episode also. But yeah, that's going to be an important connection point for the city, of course. And I imagine that this concourse is probably sort of a recent investment by the national government, probably. I don't know. There's probably more sort of backstory in terms of maybe this is like the for like the biggest planes or something like that. I don't really know, because I mean obviously most of the air traffic in the country is going to be international flights, just because obviously the country is really small and it's pretty well connected by rail and road infrastructure. So there probably aren't that many sort of regional flights or anything like that. So yeah, most of the flights are probably overseas, and maybe the sort of you'll sort of see what the older terminals look like a little later in the video, and maybe I'm sort of imagining those are probably serving kind of the regional international flights, if you will, and then maybe this terminal here for concourse. I'm not really sure what the official term is, but the thing I'm building on screen right now with this kind of white canopy structure, I'm imagining this is probably for the biggest planes that are flying, like to Asia or something like that. And yeah, it's probably a relatively recent investment by the government to kind of maybe spur some economic growth. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool that I'm sort of able to get the architecture to reflect that. You'll see, I sort of mentioned it already, but I think I do a decent job of getting different types of architecture into the airport, and kind of, partially mirroring things I see in real life and partially just kind of making things up, and making things that look really cool. And yeah, let me know down in the comments if you guys, what part of the airport is sort of most intriguing to you, or if you have any ideas for, specifics in terms of how the airport operates and when different things were built. I've talked with people on my Discord about building some kind of historical aspect into the airport. I'm sort of imagining that there could be like obviously this airport is built on what is, in game it sort of doesn't matter, but within the story is a lot of reclaimed land on this kind of other island that's north of the main city. I'm imagining that there could have been some kind of older airfield maybe on the main island. Again, maybe that served like, before the country was as developed as it is now. Maybe there were, planes that could fly to like the really rural regions that weren't connected by road or something like that. Maybe I'll build that in a later episode. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any interest in seeing that and or ideas for, inspiration. Because something like that would be cool. I don't really know how how the history of this airport would really work. I mean, mainly because I've used the reclaimed land idea basically to give myself some freedom to kind of build it as I sort of was inspired to build things, which again is a little bit of a cop out on my part, but also serves to make things look pretty interesting, I think. And again, it's pretty realistic for major new international airports like this. They're oftentimes built so that there isn't like they aren't like hemmed in by geography necessarily. Um, yeah, that's enough. That's enough rambling about kind of the hypotheticals. You can see on screen here. I built these. I used these two circles of the. Again, this is just using the airport concourse from the airport's CLC, but arranging it in a circle and then connecting these circles to the main terminal that I've constructed already. And you'll see I do a pretty cool thing here, I think, with um, these circles here. Before I get to that, I add this timber concourse from Bad Peanut. One of the few concourse assets on the workshop that I found. Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. I also kind of use the kind of timber aesthetic. You'll see that kind of later on. Yeah, this is kind of what I was mentioning about kind of splicing in these plane stands kind of throughout the episode, just to get a sense of the scale and kind of an idea of where I wanted to put things later on. This is where I use this kind of circle geometry. This is inspired by a bunch of different airports. I can't even remember exactly which ones, but a lot of airports have these kind of hub concourses. I mean, I'm sure there's maybe there's a more official term, or maybe that is the official term. I don't really know. But basically, there's kind of your traditional concourse out to this single point where there's a bunch of gates radiating from it. And I tried to sort of take that idea and come up with a design that would look really cool from the air. And I decided on kind of using procedural objects as I almost always do with custom builds like this, and sort of making a bunch of these little spokes like this that are going to hold up this really cool like canopy roof. And I kind of play around with the kind of the colors and stuff. I'm imagining this is like obviously not super old or anything, but a little bit older than the other concourse. So I tried to make it look a little bit darker, maybe a little more weathered. This is probably like a kind of a modern futuristic project, maybe in like the 80s or 90s. And yeah, kind of reflected Nyrstad International Airport as being like sort of growing, and they added these two new concourses at the same time to kind of really expand the capacity. Or maybe these concourses were a part of the original build of the airport. I'm not really sure. Anyway, as I was talking about earlier, these are the canopies that I built. I used an umbrella prop and converted it to procedural objects, and then just kind of did all kinds of stuff, kind of like stretching it to fit this shape. I ended up changing the color to be a little bit darker. As much I did kind of like they're like bright blue, but I figured that wouldn't be that realistic for this area. A lot of planes flying around. It's probably gotten they probably wouldn't have chosen something this bright. So I tried to change it to something a little more industrial looking. But I really like how this kind of geometric pattern came together. I don't know. It's probably not that realistic in terms of being an efficient way of building a roof like this, or and it's not necessarily something I got from real life or anything like that. But I think it looks really cool. You'll see in the cinematics, the shots I get of it are really, really cool, I think. And yeah, I do this pattern kind of a bunch of times. I have these, obviously I have these like kind of support beams holding up the canopy. And the way I set it up is my idea is each one of these roof sections is kind of for one gate. And as you'll see a little bit later on, these sections are too small to really accommodate a plane stand in game. So my idea is going to be to maybe put like one plane stand on the part of the concourse that's kind of facing towards the runways, and then kind of the ones that are more cramped and like kind of next to each other, next to the straight part of the concourse. Those will probably just be decorative. But yeah, I'll kind of try to squeeze a lot of those like jet bridges and other gate infrastructure. It may place on a few prop planes, but they probably won't be. I won't be able to make it functional because again, I want the taxiways and runways to look at least kind of realistic. I mean, it's not going to be perfect again because the scale is a little bit off. But yeah, my goal is to make it look as realistic as I can within sort of the reasonable bounds of my ability and my knowledge. You can see now I'm just copying and pasting this little section I built over to the other concourse. I really like how that looks. Yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think. I'm also using this. I'm using this airport terminal pack from the workshop. I can't remember exactly who makes it, but it comes with a ton of different buildings that kind of all are in the same kind of sort of generic airport style, and they're really nice. I use this circular one here to kind of again mirror the ends of the concourses and connect the two parts of the terminal together. Again, there's kind of the main one where the road is, and then the other one where the train station and metro connection is going to be. And yeah, I think that kind of again sort of ties everything together a little bit with with sort of the circle motif in the kind of central area of the airport. And yeah, now first of all, I changed the color to kind of to more of a dark, like slate gray almost. I think that looks a little more realistic. And yeah, and then I had to sort of integrate these sort of canopy roof things into the main concourse. And what I sort of gathered from Google Earth and just from my sort of very basic research is that a lot of these concourses, the actual building isn't that interesting. It looks kind of just generic and industrial. Obviously, that's not that's not the sort of theme I went for with the kind of super modern looking concourse. But these kind of older ones, I'm imagining that, yeah, these are kind of more, I don't know exactly what the word is that I'm trying to think of, but yeah, just kind of industrial looking. I kind of just made these roofs out of just sort of concrete slabs and color them to be kind of different shades of kind of dark gray. And yeah, I also kind of had to play around with the elevation a little bit. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it, this could have been avoided if I just made the land here a little bit higher. But I don't know, I kind of just went with it. And yeah, no, that's another thing. A lot of the actual terminal buildings are a little bit higher up than they probably should be in terms of not necessarily in terms of realism, but in terms of the game mechanics. So I'm probably going to have the plane stands that are on the terminal are largely going to be decorative, just because I don't want the planes clipping into the ground or like floating or whatever. And then yeah, the planes that are going to be actually moving around are probably going to be spawning from plane stands sort of farther out, closer to the runways, where there's kind of less chance of things clipping together. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's gonna do a pretty good job of sort of combining the kind of realistic kind of visuals that I'm going for with kind of, at least not necessarily. I'm not really playing the game in a traditional sense. I'm sort of just bending the mechanics to achieve things that I want, achieve like cool looking things more than anything. Yeah, I think that is going to be achieved by the strategy I've kind of laid out. Yeah, sort of remains to be seen a little bit. Again, as I said before, it's sort of this is sort of a long episode because it took a long time to figure out exactly how to get these different designs down and kind of built. And yeah. But anyway, as I was talking about, these two concourses are a little more industrial looking, at least on the kind of straight parts that are connecting to the kind of hubs at the end. And I achieved this again by the concrete slab roofs, and then also using a different color concrete for the walls. This is something I'm going to go in detail in a later episode. I didn't add any like windows or anything. But you can imagine these walls are going to have windows in them, and they're going to be where the jet bridges connect. And there's going to be a couple of plane stands that kind of, obviously that's where planes are going to spawn or whatever. You can imagine that now as I'm kind of putting it together. I think it sort of starts to come together in this episode, but it's by no means a finished product. I still have a lot of work to do to get this looking exactly how I want it to. But yeah, hopefully you guys can see the vision that I have, and hopefully you're kind of on board with how it's going to look a little bit down the line. Since I mentioned this before, the episode is super long. I figured I'd talk a little bit about the recently released City Skylines 2 updates and kind of some of my future plans. Like many of you, I'm sure you guys are very excited, as am I, for the October 24th, the officially announced release date. As I'm recording this, I'd also just saw the first dev diary for the new road tools, which looks really cool. Yeah, I'm first of all, I'm super excited to see the new game, to get my hands on it and to sort of see this type of things I can build. I'm kind of planning, at least tentatively, to start a series like as soon as it comes out, kind of like figuring the new game out, the new mechanics out, along with all of you. I think that will be a cool way of kind of building some community around the game. Just getting it so everyone's kind of figuring out different mechanics and different trying out different ideas together. Um, so yeah, let me know if you're excited about that. I think that would be a really cool way of both for me to kind of figure things out and to hopefully sort of teach as I'm doing it, a little bit anyway. Maybe it's ambitious, but that'd be cool to kind of figure it out alongside other people. In terms of the future of Vestanland, I'm obviously going to work on it um, until the until the fall. I mean, that's gonna be my sort of main focus. And then I've kind of been like thinking about this even before City Skylines 2 had been announced. Um, I think what I'm going to try to do is continue the Vestanland series in City Skylines 2 by building like another island, kind of like the one we have now. Again, I'm not really sure exactly what the scale is going to look like, but yeah, building another island kind of to the north of this one, in kind of within the story that we're kind of developing. And again, that's going to be probably a long time in the future, realistically, just because I need to like make sure I have an understanding of City Skylines 2, how the game works. And I probably, yeah, I'm sort of, there's a lot to be figured out in terms of the kind of asset and mod community, and how that's going to work and how we can sort of keep the same aesthetic that we have now. But yeah, that's kind of what I've thought of as a pretty cool idea. I think that would be really interesting. And yeah, again, I'm gonna do a series where I kind of figure things out in the new game, um, and hopefully that'll be both informative and entertaining. And then I've really sort of put a lot of effort and work into this series, and I would hate to see it go away. But I think the chance to continue it in a new game, and not sort of start the series again in a way, but then kind of sort of harken back to a lot of the work I've already done. I think that'd be a cool way of just kind of bridging the gap eventually and kind of connecting the story over the two different games. So yeah, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. That's something I think I'm definitely gonna try to do. Obviously, it's a long way from now, and I'm still gonna, obviously my current priority is keeping the Vestanland series going, building this airport, which again has taken a lot longer than I had initially anticipated. But yeah, I'm excited for the future. The new road tools look amazing, and I'm excited to see what else the developers announce for us in the coming weeks. Yeah, let me know what else you guys are excited for in the new game. I know I'm, as I said before, excited to get my hands on it and see what's possible. But yeah, in terms of getting back to the build, you saw me complete those kind of hub and spoke concourses, and now I'm moving on to the timber concourse area. And what I decided to do was try to tie in the timber concourses with the rest of the building, by kind of putting these wooden like pergola things. I just used PO to like stretch them and like really like basically blow them up to a lot bigger, and create this kind of lattice work type thing, that kind of, I don't know. It's not like it doesn't really have any like structural purpose or anything, but I think it looks cool and kind of ties the different architectural styles together. Again, having the wooden area kind of folded into kind of the modern glass structure, and yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. Again, as I said, no structural function in game or even like in real life, really. But again, a lot of what I try to do is just to make things look cool, even if it's not for any particular reason. And I think that's what this does. Yeah, you can see kind of just having it kind of directly tie into the main terminal building. I think it's helpful. And then I again use the terminal pack of buildings I've been using already, to kind of fill in these nodes. I don't really like how the DLC node connections work with the concourses. I think the concourses themselves look pretty good, but the nodes look kind of weird. So I've been, as you've seen already, I've been using this kind of basic terminal, like filler building almost, to kind of create a new roof. And yeah, I think that looks a lot better. It kind of ties things together. and having this kind of industrial looking roof, I think is good. Um, yeah, again, let me know if this kind of if this works. Yeah, I think it looks good, and again, kind of the goal is to kind of tie a bunch of these different styles together, um, and I think these kind of filler buildings are really important for that because you don't want the kind of connections to be too jarring. Um, and yeah, I think once I sort of put those in, it kind of the whole airport complex really started coming together for me anyway. And I was sort of really sort of like, okay, like this is how it's going to look. This sort of is what I was envisioning when I started building the project. And yeah, that's always super satisfying to see. In terms of these wooden pergola thingies, I also added a little bit of this is asphalt up here to kind of change the roof color a little bit. Yeah, just kind of a small detail that kind of broke up the sort of kind of boring like same color of the roof. And yeah, now I'm moving on to trying to get a little bit more of the functionality built into the game or built into the airport. Game functionality built into the airport, I should say. Again, attaching some of these plane stands. These are a couple of the ones that are going to be like functional in game, obviously. I don't the plane stand. It looks okay. It has kind of too many like props and details, and the colors are a little bit too bright in terms of being realistic. But it's definitely it's good enough that I can work with it. Unlike a lot of the vanilla buildings, which again kind of have that cartoony style. That isn't really what I'm going for. But yeah, in terms of these plant stands, you'll see I can sort of cover up parts of them and kind of work with other parts to kind of fold it all together into the airport airport aesthetic that I've been talking about and I'm going for. A big part of that is adding in these asphalt squares that are specifically from like for an airport like this. One other thing I sort of noticed that I hadn't really ever thought about, but I sort of noticed it every time I looked at another one of these airports, is that the area where the planes are kind of parked at the gates, that area is made out of this kind of lighter cement, whereas the runways and taxiways are darker, like asphalt. And I'm not really sure exactly why this is. I imagine has something to do with the planes being pretty heavy and like the area where they're sitting has to be stronger, maybe something like that. Whereas the asphalt, maybe they need more of like maybe it's like the texture is like easier to grip or something. I don't really know. That's kind of just me theorizing about it. But anyway, in terms of creating a realistic airport, I knew I had to include that. So you'll see the rest of the episode is me kind of fitting in all these different concrete squares here, kind of to the areas that I imagine the planes will be. And I do a little bit here of carving up kind of the, again, the height differences I was talking about between the ground and where the terminals are. And yeah, getting this right, I think was important. I think it looks pretty good by the end. It sort of was another one of those processes that took a lot of trial and error. But once I had it all together, it sort of looked really nice. And yeah, I'm kind of you'll see here. I kind of put some of these kind of concrete squares in areas where I'm imagining that the kind of decorative plane stands will be, as well as the real ones I'm placing down. I'm also using a lot of the Terra networks to make sure the terrain is perfectly flat, so I can kind of line up all these squares that I put down, so they make sure that if they're at the same height, if they're all visible, that means the terrain is like perfectly level. That's kind of at least the strategy I was using. I also was using these squares to cover up these voids because I was using the invisible taxiway, airports DLC taxiways. I think that Chameleon TBN, I think that's his name on the workshop. Again, these are I imagine we're just designed with the idea of making airports more highly customizable, which is cool. And yeah, I use those here, but there's no way of connecting them to the plane stands without having these kind of weird node void thingies. So I kind of just had to use the square procedural objects that I've been talking about to cover those up. And yeah, again, what I was mentioning about these sort of hub and spoke concourses, I kind of want, you can sort of see the vision there for having the jet bridges kind of radiate out from the different canopy sections. I think that looks pretty cool. Again, getting that actually looking super realistic and looking really like as it's going to be at the end is going to be the subject of a future video. And yeah, but I think that what was most important about this video and this episode was getting kind of really getting the vision of what the airport's going to look like down. I think it looks really good. And yeah, kind of getting the overall look of it right, and then being able to sort of jump off of that and add a lot of detail and realism. Will make that process a lot easier. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I do want to say that I'm going to be pretty busy over the next few months. So again, episodes are going to be a little bit more spaced out. I might do something along the lines. Maybe I might do like shorter episodes, at least for the time being. So if I'm going to keep up a weekly schedule, I'd have to make maybe like 10-minute episodes, something like that. Which is something I'd be interested in. Yeah, let me know. I might make some kind of poll about that, to see what you guys think. Because yeah, obviously I want to create content consistently, but I also want to create sort of interesting, engaging, episodes where I get a lot done. So it's going to be kind of a balance of that, at least for the upcoming months. Kind of the last main thing I do here is I kind of splice in a ton of these like dirt and stain decals. And you'll see I do a little bit of work to like try to blend them in, so they're just sort of barely showing through the concrete. And this does a great job, I think, of really tying everything together. Obviously, airports are not they're not the cleanest, most pristine places. There's a lot of heavy machinery going around, the planes, obviously, but also all kinds of maintenance vehicles and stuff. So there's a lot of discoloration and skid marks, tire marks, different stuff. There's a lot of just kind of dirt and grime, even in nice airports. Obviously it's a nice international airport, but there's still a lot of maintenance and kind of dirty work that needs to get done to keep a place like this running. So I wanted to reflect that with these decals. And yeah, you'll see I end up copying and pasting both this kind of scheme of the procedural object concrete squares, but then also in the decals on top of them, sort of throughout the airport. You'll see that in the cinematics coming up. And you can see, I didn't mention this, but I used the procedural object function of being able to change the individual vertices to kind of get the plane stand taxiway area covered up perfectly. It kind of has a little bit of a peak in the middle, the way the network is designed. So I had to kind of make those squares a little bit different from the other ones. That was kind of a weird thing I had to do, but it ended up working out fine. As I said, this part of the episode really ties everything together. And yeah, this is about the end of the video now. I want to, again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please feel free to check out the Instagram and Discord links down in the description if you want to get more involved with the channel. Yeah, sorry for the wait for this episode. Hopefully I will see you guys sooner rather than later in the next video. So yeah, thanks again and goodbye.